Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain also.
It's a Thursday morning. You're welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Indeed. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
And from Abuja, good morning. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf.
Yes, indeed. Today again we've got Dr. Marcel Mbamalu, who is going to take us through some of the dailies expectedly. I mean, some of the issues that were playing themselves out yesterday continues today in terms of reactions, and so we'll see how several people will respond to this. We have seen some already. He's here. He's a publisher of Prime Business Africa. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Good morning, Chamberlain. Good to be here once again.
Oof. For the newsroom, for you, yesterday, what a day it was, actually. How did you get yourself into the mix and then reacted to some of these things in terms of how they just broke so quick and fast?
Yeah, you know, a whole lot happened, and just like it was happening every day, but yesterday was actually, you know, special in the sense that it was more or less a security issue, and not just a lot happening both in the political terrain and but more or less in the security sector. You know, the Kuje prison stuff and what has happened and what. But it actually caused for concern because if you for such a magnitude of that kind of security breach in that magnitude is actually a problem for the country and the economy, because if you look at it, how are you going to start? Where are you going to begin to even address
Let me start with Newton this morning.
You know.
Look at the lead story. Kuje Correctional Center attack. ISWAP claims responsibility. Releases video evidence. Abuja Kaduna train attackers behind assaults. Gumi's aid. Says invaders hinted of imminent attacks. Assailants freed 64 Boko Haram members, ascribed to a defense minister. I'm highly disappointed of failure of intelligence. Buhari, president won't succumb to terrorist activities. Presidency. Atiku, PDP, Middlebelt Forum, others express worry. And then this perspective. UK, US warn residents against travel near Kuje facility. 19 states. What a scenario playing out here.
Well, it's as I said earlier, it calls for concern. The security situation in Nigeria. I think Nigerians have cried out a lot for a very long time over this, and nothing seems to have been done. Nothing seems to be happening. But I believe that the president actually saying, if you watch what has happened on the social media, I think they're just making mockery of the whole situation, saying, be calm, everything is under control, this is going to happen, because this is the kind of thing, our politicians, our leaders, keep rolling out when there's a kind of security situation like this. But on a more serious note, it is not a joke right now. I think there's need for a state of emergency to be actually declared on security sector in Nigeria.
How about this perspective of ISWAP claiming responsibility, releasing video evidence?
Of course, you can see that actually, even without them saying that, you should know that actually Boko Haram actually they are linked with ISWAP. ISWAP is more or less an advanced what do you call it? An advanced form of Boko Haram. So, but what has happened is that, you know, already high-profile members of Boko Haram are in detention at Kuje prisons, and of course, you can expect that that will happen. And having been notified of that before it happened and nothing happened, also speaks to our recurring issues with security in Nigeria.
I know that there'll be several other perspectives on this matter, but just above that lead story is this one about the economy. Nigeria loses $10 million daily to crude oil theft. I guess you're not new to this because, I mean, there's been several analyses in terms of what can be done, why is this going on, how should it be stopped. Again, it's on the front page today.
Crude oil theft, Chamberlain, I'm sure you're also tired of hearing about that and nothing being done. You know, somebody talked about, you know, privatizing profit and then socializing, or rather democratizing loss, you know, in terms of what our leaders do. You know, I wonder why you have a kind of natural resources in such areas in the south or some parts of southeast, some parts of not just oil. You have gold even in Zamfara and all of those stuffs. You know, how do we harness this? How do we now have a few politicians, a few leaders managing, having access, having rights to these resources, and then you don't really, you don't get that benefit. If you get to the Niger Delta, for example, those who have rights to the oil wells and those things, they are not the extra. They don't have what it takes to really harness those. What they do is get those rights and then sell it to some foreign interests, and then
well, Dr. Mbamalu, on that same issue, this is not we're not hearing about this oil theft thing for the first time.
Yes, that's the point I'm making. That it's not new, and of course, the president is the oil minister. The president is the oil minister, so everything stops, you know, on the table of the president. Whether we like it or not, the president actually has to do something about that, and it's not just declarations and proclamations. It has to be an engagement process where all sectors, not just security. Of course, what happens, we don't even know how much, rather, what's the quantity of oil, what's the volume of oil that we produce, and what we export. What we see is that what the foreign interests, what the oil companies, the oil majors, what they actually declare to the federal government is what we see. That's what we produce and sell. Okay. So accountability and transparency is actually key, and we need to begin to engage stakeholders, discuss this, and know how to harness that. It's not what I think the president can do alone at this stage, because we seem to be lost in. And I wonder what solutions
the PIA is about.
Absolutely, I was headed there. If we're still having this conversation.
Well, you are a businessman.
Of course, the PIA is been there, but the point is that, of course, the PIA, you know how long it took before we got to where we are. Still has its own issues. Even the oil communities are still saying they are not well represented.
There's still areas that are trying to sort out.
People argue that the PIA actually has the interest of the oil majors more protected than the oil communities and the majority of Nigerians and the economy of Nigeria as a whole.
Are you in any way calling for the probe of the National Assembly? Don't answer that one. Oh. Nigerian Tribune this morning is still talking about Kuje prison attack. ISWAP claims responsibility. 64 Boko Haram members escaped, 5 killed, 443 inmates at large. Abba Kyari Dariye Inyame safe in custody, according to the Correctional Service. Stories on page 5. Of course, there's a quote ascribed to the president that will get into that later. But right beyond, under the pictures on the front page, fuel queues to remain until full deregulation. Okay. Blames rising diesel cost on Russia-Ukraine war. Average daily petrol consumption now 60 million liters. Pengassan tells reps. Stories are on pages 7 and 23. Why are we postponing the evil day about this full deregulation thing?
Yeah, well, we keep talking about fuel deregulation. I mean, oil subsidy deregulation and all the rest. It still boils down to what I said earlier, that we need to be more intentional about addressing the issue of the economy. You know, look at what has just happened. If I'm talking about fuel prices, fuel subsidy, and all the rest, look at what has just happened with the reshufflement in the cabinet and all of those stuff. I think...
Any impact for you on that one?
Of course, seriously, because if you look at that, a lot of... there's a swap. A lot of the... Sorry, it looks like I'm taking us out of the question, because, you know, everything starts with strategy. If you don't have the strategy, you can't deliver. You know, look at just 2003 election is just coming. And then what we had is that about 6 or 7 ministers are interested in becoming president. He's taking over from the whatever. And then what finally happened was that a few of them resigned. Now we have new ministers coming on board, you know, to replace them. And there's this kind of reshufflement and all of those. How many months to the end of the administration? So how are you going to address all of this? Then you have a new minister taking a new portfolio in a new department and beginning to understudy. You need 6 months. For any policy to work in a government situation, you need about 6 months. The policy announcement takes 6 months for it to begin to implement. Another 6 months for it to begin to have impact on the targeted sector that you want to address. So when you begin to reshuffle, I think that's ill-advised. The kind of moving, for example, the minister for the minister for there's a new minister that has got old minister has gone to solid minerals and all of those things and all.
I think
so
deployed to mines and steel or something.
Exactly. Yeah. That's Saraki.
Memorial Science and Technology.
Yeah, oh yes. So if you begin to look at that holistically, you see that whether it's on economy, security, and all of this, it has an impact because somebody comes on board and begins to think of understudy what his predecessor or her predecessor had done, and then begin to create a new policy and begin to look at how he's going to implement it. So I think that, in fact, everything is in abeyance. Everything is actually on standby for now, or standstill rather. So we can't begin to talk about whether it's first subsidy because of security and all of those if we don't have a medium-term, I'm not even talking about long-term, medium-term strategy, medium-term plan that will be implemented and become a continuum in case a minister leaves and that person comes and takes from there. But we don't have that culture. Not even in our, I think maybe it's slightly in the private sector we do have it, but not in our governance architecture that we have this kind of arrangement. So, well,
whether it's the cabinet reshuffle or the Kuje prison attack or it's the continuing fuel scarcity, the papers are headed in the same direction this morning. But let's take a look at the big story on the front page of leadership newspapers. The big story goes thus: Madala Nyanya bombers, 62 terrorists, 264 others on the loose. Well, some papers say 444 are at large, actually, so you may want to take that particular figure with a pinch of salt. Let's look at the riders. NSCDC officer, 4 inmates killed, 16 others injured. Kaduna attackers responsible. Renew execution threat as victims spend 100 days in captivity. ISWAP claims responsibility. I'm disappointed, says PMB. Now, president leaves for Senegal. Aid defends trip. Perpetrators will be arrested. Defense minister vows. Heads must roll. That's according to experts. There's a lot to unpack, from these riders. But let's look at the propriety of the president's trip this time around. Speaking of which, the aide is defending it. I wonder if you're caught somewhere in between, considering the fact that in a departure from his usual disposition towards crisis situation, the president visited Kuje prison yesterday. How are you weighing in on this, Mr. Mbamalu?
Well, I wonder what you think as well, because I mean, the president wouldn't have any other option but to visit, because Kuje prison is in Abuja and he's there. I wonder the explanation that the government would have given to the citizens if while the president was still there and was still in that city and it happened in that magnitude. Because even the Kuje attack, actually, the Kuje prison attack actually represents a kind of, it's a national embarrassment, actually. It is. And I think the president pointed that out when he said he was disappointed with the intelligence operation in the country. Because that kind of thing, if it could happen in Abuja, where else would it not happen? Where else can it not happen? So it means that the entire, everyone has reason to be alarmed, to be afraid, And I think if I were to advise, I have to say all the security structure that we have, I'm not saying leave some parts of the country fallow, but if you get to Owerri, for example, get to some places in the south side, you see heavy presence, artillery, in fact, almost like artillery. You have heavy presence of military and all of do there. I think this is time to move. I'm not a security expert, but I know this much to say that as a citizen that, just a rule of the thumb will be, okay, just move those people up there right now. Just keep a kind of skeleton, because the threat in those parts are not as serious. Maybe economic interest in the south and all of those, but security of life is the first and foremost thing that you need to guarantee as a leader. So I think the best thing is to ensure that we have enough personnel in the northern part of the country, as it were, right now. No, because it's an embarrassment for Abuja not to be safe. If Abuja is not safe, then Nigeria is not safe. And you wouldn't be blaming the foreign countries, other countries, giving travel advice and warning, that they don't go near this, no, don't go to 19 states. What else would you expect when a country has that kind of issue hanging over its neck? You know, a country saying, don't go to 19 states in this particular country. It's like, you know, the country is failing. So I think we need to come close ranks, forget whatever it's our political interest, forget whatever it's our ethnic or whatever interest, and come together and save Nigeria, as it were.
Speaking of safety, ISWAP has claimed responsibility for that attack. And
Semi-swap,
ISWAP is the same as the Kaduna train attackers.
Yes.
They are now threatening to kill, you know, the travelers who were
and mind
abducted.
you, we've been told, mind you, we've been told that most of these guys doing this, they came from the borders, they came in, they are not, majority of them are not Nigerians. They just come and blend with Nigerians. That's what we are told officially, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
so but if they're one and the same,
that's the truth.
What are the lessons we should be learning from this?
From that, that we should tighten our borders. We should. No,
they're threatening to kill the travelers that were abducted.
Yeah, of course, the negotiation has been on. The government should do something much more than it's doing right now. Of course, there's no compromise as releasing people or freeing people in the Kuje prison, those high-profile criminals, profile terrorists from the prison. So I don't think there's a sacrifice government could do now that could be too much to free those guys. So I think whatever compromise is going to make that doesn't have to take lives, that would save lives, I think government has to do it right now to save those people in detention, in custody, or rather, what we call it, custody, in the den of the kidnappers right now. Yeah, if you ask me, I would say, yeah, whatever we need to do as a country to release those people for our own image sake, we should do right now. I think everything is at 6s and 7s right now. So there's nothing to lose. We've lost almost everything. So right now, let's free those we can free, those in detention. Their demand, of course, could be money, could be releasing those that the government is holding. Already, most of them have been released without our let. So right now, I think we need to move faster to see what we can still save of those being held by ISWAP.
Indeed. Malkwe?
Well, Daily Trust perhaps might shed a little more light on, you know, just why the attack happened, because that's how they've couched their headlines. Why Kaduna train attackers invaded Kuje prison. Target police formation, Kainji, Niger prisons. ISWAP claims attack. Actionable intelligence ignored. 2 police officers nabbed for complicity. I'm disappointed with our intelligence system. That's credited to the President, Buhari. Northern elders, dons lash at President over Senegal trip. So you find all of the details on pages 4 and 5, but they are delving into the why that particular attack happened. And it looks like there is further information that we could, if nothing is done, be seeing another attack in Kainji, Niger prisons. Look at the bottom here. We've spoken extensively on the attack, the train attack, but let's take a look at something that also affects a lot of other Nigerians, which is electricity. Intrigues trail 5 discos shake-up as firms kick. You're in the business world. You've covered business for a long time now. I do not know what insights you have into this this shake-up that is going to be done within 5 discos. We know that the discos are heavily indebted, and it looks like the banks are now closing in on these discos. Do you think that if they do take them over, could they really make a difference in terms of how the discos operate?
Yeah, thank you, Mokbe. I think, of course, I was speaking with someone yesterday about this, and the opinion was that, okay, what is happening is actually a testimony to what happened when these discos were privatized, and what happened? Of course, there was lack of transparency and others. So it speaks to actually the fact that we're suffering from poor supply of electricity, power supply, because these discos actually are not doing enough or doing what they're supposed to do. First and foremost, the discos are undercapitalized. If you really look deep, you will know that actually they don't have the resources to do to render such services. It's very capital intensive. They were not prepared. I think a lot of political interest was considered or came into play when these discos were being privatized, and it's showing right now. If you look at Kano Disco, a lot of issues, even before now, if you read in the stories about what was coming out of the Kano Disco, you could see a lot of issues of transparency, issues in terms of management and all those stuffs. And they didn't have the capacity to, they didn't have what it takes to even run that. They all took that because they could, got it, and then got stranded with what to do with it. So that's just the what we are seeing in the outcomes right now. So it's a big issue if the discourse, just like we had with the banks in the early 2000s and mid 2000s, and we're having that kind of issue right now when we are not even producing enough, generating enough megawatts, enough electricity to power a state out of the 36 states. The kind of electricity that we have cannot power Lagos alone in terms of the need, the demand for power. So, and we're having this issue. What it means is that it's still a long way for us as a country. I suggest that discos or no discos, we should look at the laws, still back to the lawmakers, look at the laws and begin to see how we can allow states, even local governments, that can, private sector people, to generate electricity. This central grid system that we're talking about, it's, for me, it's a huge joke, if not fraud, for us to say you cannot generate your own power. The law doesn't allow you to generate your own power, and when you do, and all of it had to pass through the national grid, and that's why we're having what we're having. So
well, even though some say that the states have got the capacities to generate, allowed by law to generate a certain amount of megawatts, but will they leverage on that? I guess only time will tell. But if you look at The Guardian, your former employers, they also focus on the same subject matter. ISWAP, the same security scenario, as a matter of fact. Buhari declares poor intelligence at Kuje, jailbreaks, demands probe, and then with a host of riders there, which some of them you have already seen. But that will be The Guardian today. So big enough to be on the front page, The Guardian, that particular one, and then the death of former OPEC Secretary General Buhari. OPEC industry stakeholders mourn Bakindo's sudden death. It came to a lot of people were shocked about that. So that's The Guardian today.
Daily Independent newspaper is also leading with the same Kuje prison break story. Jailbreak, Buhari queries security structure at Kuje prison, expresses shock at level of destruction. A host of riders there. That picture speaks to that as well. Right under that picture, APC VP candidate Tinubu stuck between El-Rufai, Shetima, and Rider says party chieftains ask court to stop APC INEC from replacing Masari. In the middle of all of this, politics is not on pause.
Yeah, on pause. Politicians won't agree with you. And no matter what happens or does not happen, for them, politics is everything. So I think 2023 is here, and the only thing I would say is that it's time for us to actually get it right now. You know, APC, PDP, Labour Party, all of them, I try not to be partisan, of course, as a journalist and whatever. But I know that we need good governance. And my take is that we have to watch it. And I mean, our leaders, our politicians have to watch it and see that we get it right at this time.
The Nigerians watching it now shouldn't it be the Nigerians watching it now who are going to employ these people into office?
Well, yes, of course, we are the employers, of course. But have you not been the employer? We have always been the employers, you know, all that long. That's the point I was making.
What has changed?
Yeah, you know.
Well, maybe we are the ones not recruiting right.
Yeah, well,
maybe we're not powerful employers. Employers are supposed to be powerful.
Yeah, well.
All right, so there you go. That wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. You're always welcome to send us a comment or two about whatever headline might have piqued your interest. Well, we'll have to thank Dr. Marcelo Bamalu, publisher of Prime Basis in Africa and former editor of The Guardian. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Chebalin. Thank you, Ayo.
Yeah, we're back in a moment. Stay with us.
It's the morning after at the Kuje Correctional Center following an attack by suspected Boko Haram terrorists. Officers and men of the Correctional Service take stock of burnt vehicles littering the premises. The retrieval process is ongoing as some of those rearrested are returned to the facility. The Minister of Defense visits the facility on an assessment tour.
What actually happened, they came in numbers, they gained entrance into the prison, and they released some of the inmates, and which we are now following to see the kind of inmates they released. The people who came to do these activities, from the records, we believe that they belong to a particular group, and most likely they are Boko Haram, because we have a sizable number of Boko Harams that are in detention, and presently we could not locate any of them. Only number, I think there are about 64 that is in the prison, and none of them now is available. They have all escaped.
The Kuje Correctional Facility houses some high-profile inmates, including suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Abba Kiari. However, a statement from the Correctional Service confirms the safety of the high-profile inmates, adding that 879 inmates escaped and over 400 of them have so far been retrieved.
These people came specifically, we understand they are Boko Haram, they came specifically for their co-conspirators, and but in order to get them, some of them are in general population, so they broke out, and other people in that general population escaped as well. But many of them have returned. They have reported themselves to the police. Some have returned. Some we have successfully retrieved from the bushes where they're hiding, and right now at least we have retrieved about 300 out of about 600 that got out of the jail cells.
One person died in the incident, while 3 others were injured. The attackers had reportedly broken into the facility from the back, creating a big hole on the perimeter fence using explosives.
From time to time we had explosions, which I think resulted in the walls that are falling, that's behind the prison, which I just noticed early this morning. And, well, for the casualty, I cannot say anything because I did not see any dead body, but I'm told that there are very minimal casualties.
After inspecting the facility, the FCT minister asks community leaders to cooperate with security agencies in arresting all fleeing inmates.
Today is not a time for a lot of speech making. I've just come, I've seen what is here on ground. I've commiserated with the Controller General, and I want to also assure them that the local community, under the leadership of His Royal Highness the Gomo of Kuje, has been informed to summon all the local heads and village chiefs and community leaders so that those who have escaped here would be traced and would be found.
Although normalcy appears to have returned to the facility, more security personnel are on the ground as the search for the remaining escapees continue.
Well, that attack continues to raise more concern across board, and one of the persons you might have heard us review in the daily is the president himself. He is disappointed concerning how some of these things have played themselves out. He says that the failure of intelligence to prevent the attack on the Kuje Correctional Center in Abuja is really upset with that. This was, relayed when he visited the medium security custodial center. He was briefed by prison officials there. That event happened, that attack happened in the late hours of Tuesday. But his spokesperson, Mr. Garba Shehu, whom we've tried to get across to, but been unsuccessful, he's in Dakar at the moment, he put up that statement and he says the president is disappointed with the intelligence system. How can terrorists organize, have weapons, attack a security installation and get away with it? He also did say, look, how is it that the defenses at the prison failed to prevent that attack, among others? So there he was paying that visit just before they then moved on to Dakar. And they also did respond to several other criticisms concerning how could he be traveling when that has happened, his convoy attacked. And the response was governance cannot stop, or else it could come across or tantamount to one or nations succumbing to terrorist threat. So all of that in the mix as we go ahead and focus on that subject matter while we await your comments. Makwe?
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have two gentlemen with us here in the studio to shed a little more light, perhaps help answer the questions that the president has posed. Major General Sesi Esekaigbe is a retired army officer. You're welcome, General, to our studios. And Honorable Dachong Bagos is a member of the National Security and Intelligence Committee in the House, and also the Deputy Chairman, Anti-Corruption Committee. Honorable, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Morning.
Well, very important questions that the president has asked this morning is the question on the lips of many Nigerians, talking about our intelligence system and how it works, and how he is wondering how it was that they could organize, have weapons, get access, and then still get away with it. They have not been stopped, and we understand that over 300 inmates at large. All of the terrorists who have been held in the terrorist unit of the prison have been freed. What exactly went wrong with our intelligence system? How were we unable to prevent this particular attack?
First and foremost, the person in charge of national security is the NSA. The NSA of Nigeria is tied to a stake by the constitutional provisions, but bear-like is trying to fight the cause. The National Security Agency Act 1986, captured in the 2004 laws, it established the Defense Intelligence Agencies, the Department of State Security Service, and the National Intelligence Agency. Now, while the State Service and the National Intelligence Agency have direct, link to the president. The DIA is responsible for the Chief of Defense Staff. Now, how is the NSA able to coordinate national security when these guys are answerable to the president? And what amount of control does he have over these agencies? So there is a lacuna. So what the president needs to do now is to immediately appoint the director of national intelligence. You see, we borrow democracy from America, but we don't follow the process and all the things that follow it. In the US, you have director of national intelligence who coordinate all the intelligence agencies. There's no gap. Unless the NSA has control over these intelligence agencies, what can he do? And I'm surprised that he has not been able to come out openly to say, look, these are my limitations. Although one time he mentioned it in the National Assembly that when he calls these people, they don't even show up. So we need to put this in proper perspective. You don't continue to do things in ad hoc arrangement. If he's in charge of national security, he should be given the powers to perform his job. Otherwise, he's tied to a stake and he cannot perform. And I don't know why he's keeping quiet.
Yeah, but if we had the intelligence, if this intelligence was provided that there was an impending attack, first and foremost, we have to ask, how did that intelligence travel? Yes, it might not have gotten to the NSA's office in time for it to have been coordinated, how it ought to have. But what agency received that information and what exactly did they do with it?
The problem we have here is that we don't hold people accountable to their actions. Every time we talk of intelligence failure, when intelligence fails, who are the people in charge of that intelligence that failed? We should be held accountable. When you don't hold people accountable, there is nothing you can do. It becomes business as usual. Well, the president said he's disappointed. So we are eagerly waiting for the actions that will follow the disappointments, because we cannot continue to let people do this and they go away without being held accountable.
I'd like you to spell it out. What actions do you hope to see the president take in the wake of his disappointment?
If you give me a job to do and I fail to do the job, what else do you want the person that hired me to do?
Who should he be holding to account this morning?
Intelligence agencies have their business to do. You see, what is amazing me, what I'm intrigued about is, now in the train attack, these elements did say that the main reason why they are doing that was because of some of their people that were held hostage or that were being held by the federal government. Now, where are these people held? Kuje prison, number one, is a medium security prison. If you have a high profile elements that you want to really keep out of circulation, why should they keep them in medium security? There are maximum security where you keep those people. And if you even kept them in this medium security prison, what do? You make adequate arrangement to make sure that these people are actually secured and that no group of elements can come in and do what they have just done, to set them free. And we are not looking at the implication of this action, because this is what happened in Owerri. At the end of the day, what we have in Owerri now is unknown gunmen. Now, these people that are loose in the street here have become unknown gunmen. The consequent action upon that is there will be a lot of hierarchy and a lot of, these criminalities.
Well, let me come to you, Honorable. This is the latest in a long list of prison breaks and attack. He just mentioned Owerri. That of Owerri happened last year, and it was extensive. The damage that was done to the security apparatus in Owerri was extensive. Even as we speak, Owerri is still on the verge of recovery. I mean, if you look at what is also happening in the southeast, in the general southeast area of the country. There are many questions, bothering the minds of many Nigerians. But I think the first one is, how is it that after we have had, we've discussed previous attacks, how is it that we're not able to put anything in place to prevent such an attack? First, in the Federal Capital Territory, in a prison that is supposed to be at least the model for all other prisons across the country. Here, security failed woefully. Do you have any insights into what you think could have gone wrong from some of the probes that your committee could have been holding in the past?
Well, Maupe, this is simply negligence of duty, because I know that the National Assembly have brought out a lot of resolutions in the past 3 years. We've even held a security summit to harness and come out with possible suggestions on how the security situation in the country will be handled. And not only that, if you could recall, we even cut short our recess some weeks ago to be able to pass some bills that have to do with how to address the issue of terrorism in the country, and especially to have an international relationship in addressing some of these issues. The National Assembly have done quite a lot, but negligence of duty and the inability and unseriousness of the executive to be able to carry out and to address some of the resolutions and advice of the National Assembly members, because there is no single week that a member will not bring issue on the floor of the House that have to do with insecurity in the country. And from those resolutions, we usually discuss them, we usually come out with possible solutions, and we have even given the security agencies the necessary funding they need for them to address some of these issues. Because at times you call them, the service chiefs, they come and tell you that, well, we lack funding, we don't have equipment, we don't have this and that, and the House usually appropriates such, but at the end of the day, here is the result. And on the floor of the House, let me pick from what General have said. On the floor of the House, we have called for the sack of the service chiefs, not only the service chiefs. Of recent, we have called even for the sack of the NSA, because the NSA, to us, does not have the capacity to handle the issue of insecurity in the country. Number one, he's a junior officer to most of the service chiefs. So if he's complaining that when he called for a meeting with the service chiefs, they don't appear, is the issue of hierarchy. It's just like a general, a colonel who is below the rank of a general will call the general for a meeting to the table. The general will look at him and say, well, are you sure you know what you're doing? So something is wrong in the security architecture, which we have even provided a solution for that in the House. And the disappointment is that Nigerians and our constituents are disappointed in the president, because in the sense that if he's disappointed in the intelligence community, we are disappointed in him for not handling and addressing the intelligence community. Because by now, 24 hours or more than 24 hours to what has happened in Kuje prison, nobody has been sacked, nobody is being interrogated among who is holding what only media talk and trying to say that this is, no, that's not how it's been done. The Chicago shooting on July 4th, the person has been apprehended, and not just apprehended, he's now facing 7-count charge already. And so people, Americans, have confidence that their government will come up to them. They are not talking about the perpetrator will be brought to book, but they are talking that justice will be given to people that were killed. But we are still talking about perpetrators who will be brought to book, 64 Boko Haram members being released. None of them is being captured at this moment. And you keep asking that, and nobody has been sacked because of that. Nobody, so a lot of questions. And to me, a lot of compromise is being looked into this.
Yeah. One correction, my honorable. The NSA is a very senior officer. He's senior to these service chiefs. He's actually senior to me. I served under him when I was defense attaché London. He was my chief of defense intelligence.
Yeah, but when he made that complaint was when the last set of
the last set, because when the last set, they were more senior than him.
Was it senior to them as well?
He was senior to the last set as well.
Okay.
It's just the dysfunction of the
ranking. But even in ranking, I don't know how you people look at it at whatsoever. Is it the senior in ranking? To me, if you are a colonel and even your junior became a major, you still give him that respect. So it's not the senior in age maybe that you might be looking at, or
No,
your own service.
So no, it is said. He's a very senior officer. He's 21st regular course, whereas the other one, the highest among the CDS, or Lone Shaki, was 25th regular course. It's actually, it's senior to all of them. But the issue there is, like I said, you know, if you are not given the power to coordinate them, you know, there's going to be a lacuna there. But like you said, you know, if you come to the National Assembly and they've given you what you need to do your job, and there are some lacuna there, they should be held accountable.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, let me come to, you know, I'm trying to picture the attack itself. Maybe this would also even make our hearts sink even further, because when you think about the fact that people, I'm not sure these were 2, 3 people. This might have been a group of people, you know, who approached the Kuje prisons. From the accounts that we hear here now, that, you know, they tried to provide some distractions also, that they created some explosive distractions elsewhere. Meanwhile, those who were carrying out the work, who planned to free the inmates, were working from the back of the prison, where they actually made a big hole with explosives and, you know, got in and set their people free. As you pointed out, I mean, for up to 600 people, I think, fled the prisons. They said they've been able to bring back roughly maybe half that number. But every single person in the terrorism cell is nowhere to be found. So there are questions to be asked as to when all of that was going on, what exactly was the security detail within the prison perimeter doing? 1. And then 2, when they eventually were freed, is it that they couldn't call for backup? Is it that there was no way we could set up checkpoints? Because we've been told that these checkpoints that we see within the city is so that when they get information, they're able to stop people, you know, here and there. Is it that we're not able to set up checkpoints? Is it that we're not able to map out what routes these people could have gone through? Kuje is surrounded by hills. So there'll be questions that there'll be very limited passage as to where these people could have gone through. These are some of the questions that bother my mind. Have you been able to think about just how that attack happened and perhaps how we're at sea in terms of bringing back some of the inmates that have escaped?
You see, it boils down to the fact that, you see, it mentioned negligence. And it means another giving task to the right people to do their job. Now, let's get one thing clear. A prison facility has its own security deployment. Now, you ask an intelligent question. We are told about 300 of them in motorbikes. How can about a group of 300 people on motorbike, let's even say there are 50, riding motorbikes, going towards Kuje, and there is no sort of protection? So where are you going to, or a search, or whatever? It's bewildering. Now let's assume they were even coming from various, routes and all that. But there's a point at which they will congregate to move towards the facility. I have gone to visit a friend in Kuje prison. Most of the security agencies there, the so-called people in there, they are in a bedroom sleeper, some of them with a radio by their distance, some of them hanging their leg by the motorcycle in that place there. You see, this criminal element, they also have intelligence. They are beginning to also examine our national psyche and our response to crisis. And they have discovered that there are lacunas everywhere.
So the preparedness of the men on the scene was also very questionable.
Very questionable. Exactly. Very questionable. This is, when you take a correctional facility, especially the one that is hosting, terrorists like that, you don't play with it. So I want the investigation that will happen in these incidents The president said he's disappointed. Let us see what comes out of it. Because a lot of people need to answer a lot of questions.
We saw that.
And let me even tell you, you see, our lackadaisical attitude, we take things very easy. Immediately after the incident, say things are under control. What are under control? When in the next second something will happen again, we start running head and scatter. What is under control? As I'm telling you now, we're having conflicting figures of the number of inmates, the people that escape and all that. Who does that in a civilized society?
Let me add.
I don't get it.
Let me add to this more. Number one, because of what has happened in the Kuje prison, you and I are no longer safe. Number two, in the sense that I can pass any of those 64 terrorists on the road and I will know who are they. We suppose by now that the picture of this 64 supposed to be circulating in the social media, supposed to be circulating on the newspapers.
It should be on the front pages this morning.
The 64 people that escaped. But eventually, if you see any of them anywhere, you should declare them or should be able to call the security agencies. A bounty should be placed on them. That is, so who profiled those 64 people? Do we even have their profile pictures, their names, their home addresses, and do they even know who they are? Can they truly tell us that who are those 64 people, or they just arrested 64 terrorists from either and just dump them without profiling each and every one of them? By now, it's not an issue of restricted information. By now, the pictures of these 64 people should be everywhere, so that we know who are amongst them who might meet on the road.
Let's just clarify for our viewers that, you know, at least we understand that up to 800 of the inmates escaped, but we understand that they've been able to get back at least 400. We do not know if anything has happened from last night till this morning, because it is very difficult also to get the authorities to give you any updates whatsoever.
And let me tell you, those ones.
So the 64 we're referring to, just so that people don't get confused, are the terrorists, the people who have been convicted terrorists within the Kuje medium security
and all
prison.
this while, the 64 people, what have they been doing in Kuje prison? Have they been taken to the court of law where they convicted and charged, where they charged to court? Are they now going through a jail sentence? What were those 64 people just doing? What was the status? So we need to know that where were they arrested from? Where did they come? Which court are they being tried? Or they were just kept and these people came to remove them? Or how many among them is now being sentenced to any of the jail terms? Because from the National Assembly, we have already put in all these laws. And that was why the anti-terrorism law, the money laundering law, the anti-corruption, all these laws, will be able to put them together so that the court of law will be able to have the necessary apparatus to jail these people. Not just that, even if any of them is in any of the countries, the laws that we amended has given us the bilateral relationship to extradite or to take any of them to any of the countries. We already have the laws. The justice system, what are they using to try these people?
Big questions. It looks like the more we probe, the more questions we raise. And, you know, we're still looking for those who will help answer these questions. But what we also know, and what we're being told now, is that the people who carried out this attack are the same terrorists who you know, tried to stop the train. In fact, who succeeded in stopping the train from Abuja to Kaduna and who kidnapped at least 51 Nigerians right now are still within their custody. And it would seem that from what we're getting, from what we're hearing, that part of the negotiation that had been ongoing was that they wanted their members released, and that wasn't happening, and they've taken matters into their own hands. So there'll be questions as to what exactly will now be the fate of those who are still within their custody, and where precisely, you know, will these people whom they have been able to free, where would they be fleeing to? These are some other questions that we should be asking, if you were, you know, within the security apparatus this morning, what will be some of the things that you will be looking at to get insight into apprehending some of these people and bringing them back to the prison?
We are supposed to be in a civilized society. When you talk of negotiation with these terrorists, who are the people doing the negotiation? Is the National Assembly authorized those people to do negotiation? Is it the government that authorized them to do the negotiation? So this is the lacuna I keep referring to. Mm-hmm. Now, even from so-called intelligence sources, they said they have a reason for attacking that train. Mm-hmm. Because some of their members are being held in captives. And they want those their members to be released. So if that were true, now, if you know we are holding their members and we want them to account for their actions, if we keep them somewhere, we should provide maximum security for them. And like the Honorable said, we don't just keep people for keeping sake. I believe when you hold people, you want them to account for their actions. Have they been charged to court? You see, some of these things are deterrent. If there are no deterrent action, we'll continue to be in this cycle of, you know, negotiation or non-negotiation. Who has the authority to negotiate with terrorists? Is it our policy as a nation to negotiate with terrorists?
Yeah, but when we have people within their custody and we're trying to get them back, shouldn't we see how we can get them back safely first?
Look, when you have hostages taken all over the world, the policy of government is very clear. Do we negotiate with hostages? If you don't, what do? You make arrangements or how to storm the place to retrieve them with minimum casualties. Then, if you want to do it surreptitiously, maybe you reach them, you know, through the backdoor channels and all that, the results also have to be shown. When we don't have policy of taking an action, when we don't have a policy on doing anything, this is what you get. If it's the policy of government not to negotiate, individuals don't just come and say they have gone to the bush, have interfaced with criminals under which platform? We're complexifying the whole security issues.
So we need to even interrogate that negotiation.
Yeah, interrogate that negotiation.
But we understand that that's where the intelligence came from. The intelligence that this attack could happen was where that came from. Some of the negotiators had the information which they passed across.
You see, we have abused that word intelligence. That's why in intelligence I go talk about actionable intelligence. What is the intelligence that will give you the result that you need? Is intelligence from a reliable source, or just some individuals on their own out of ideology said, okay, let me go to the bush or let me go to the place and interface with those people? So do you rely on such ad hoc arrangement? So intelligence must be actionable and the sources must be very clear. So our national psyche has been injured, and we should declare a national emergency on security sector. This is what we need to do now. The conversation should be around national emergency on security sector. What are we not doing well? How do we intend to correct those things and move forward as a nation?
I think...
Honorable, I'm going to have to ask you to hold your thought. We'll speak to it when we come back from this break. We have to take a moment right now, and we'll be asking further questions on what exactly would constitute declaring a national emergency on our security sector. In just a moment, please stay with us.
The attack on the Kuje Medium Security Custodial Center in the Federal Capital Territory raises a lot of questions about the security situation in the country because of the caliber of inmates housed in the facility. It is the latest occurrence in a spate of jailbreaks that has been unraveling in the country since 2010. In the past 14 months alone, there have been 8 jailbreaks, more than double the number of such incidents in the previous 3 years. Some of the attacks that come to mind include the attacks on facilities in Owerri, Bauchi, Ubiaja, Kano, Jos, Kaba, and Oyo states.
Some of these inmates are suspects that are being tried for cases revolving around terrorism. And we know that a significant number of them have the knowledge and the know-how to boost the capacity of these terrorists that are out there. So unfortunately, it doesn't look very good.
The implications are obvious. It brings a lot of insecurity. People are apprehensive that they are not safe, having known that these people have, they are within the society. And having such people in the society does not mean well for us.
Most of the jailbreaks seem unconnected. However, the attacks are carried out in a similar manner using explosives, according to security analysts who want the government to learn from these attacks.
We must not wait for it to happen. We've got to rate and rate and rate whether places that cannabis is used in their hemp, places we think drug is used. There must be close collaboration and synergy with the NDLEA and other security forces, even with the EFCC, talking of financial crimes, because some of this also require the use of money.
There is a pattern of vulnerability that is quite consistent with our correctional services. There are two reasons. One has to do with the internal security arrangement within those facilities. Inmates have access to phones. They are able to communicate with the outside world freely. Their physical security arrangement is as good as zero.
For now, troops have taken over the Kuje facility as calm is restored. However, it's instructive to heed the advice of security analysts on the need for accountability on the part of the officials who are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that the facility is safe and secure.
Welcome back. So many questions remain unanswered about some of these matters, and lots of people still want assurance and they want to see certain things being done, such that it's not just all talk and no action. But many continue to wonder, when all of this happened, they thought that the Minister of Interior should have been in the front lines. Where is he at the moment? Why is he not speaking to Nigerians about what transpired, rather than leave it to rumors that he was there in the very early hours of that morning when it occurred? But we tried to get across, no response yet. And as it works, perhaps in the ministry, they've not also made themselves available for a lot more explanation other than statements that they've been putting across. And speaking about statements that were put across, there's this one from Umar Abubakar, who is the Chief Superintendent of Corrections, Public Relations Officer. He put up that statement for Controller General of Corrections, and part of that statement indicated that he was explaining how 879 Kuje prison inmates escaped. He says that this is in furtherance to his earlier press release on the unfortunate attack by gunmen suspected to be terrorists. I wish to state that the attackers broke into the medium security custodial center, Kuje, using explosive devices through the main entrance and the fence of the facility, respectively, killing a personnel of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, that's the NSCDC, attached to the custodial center, and leaving 3 personnel of the Nigerian Correctional Service seriously injured. A total of 879 inmates escaped from the facility during the unfortunate attack. As at the time of this report, 443 have been recaptured, 551 inmates are currently in custody, 443 inmates are still at large, 4 inmates dead, and 16 inmates sustained various degrees of injuries and are being treated at the moment. However, efforts are ongoing to recapture all fleeing inmates. And then there was a question about whether or not certain high-profile persons who were there were escaped or anything. He says this is to confirm to the general public that DCP, Abba Kyari, and other VIPs held in the facility did not escape. They're presently in custody. Hail and Hertie. And so, many other questions would then be, well, if they carried out those attacks for more than 2 hours, how is it that he didn't escape? Where was he? Is it the same facility? Did they have a different compartment? And, so several questions about that. But we also did try to get across to Mr. Garba Shehu on this subject matter, because it's not just about Kuje attack. The president did visit there. We've seen that image. His convoy, the president's convoy, remember, the Advance Party was also attacked. And there were some scenarios there, but I did put across some of those questions to him, trying to get him this morning. And so he says, well, he's having connection challenges, and so he can't connect with us this morning, as he is in Dakar with the president, as we all know. But I did ask him about those personnel who were injured, but his response is that the 2 injured staff have been released from hospital and are now in Abuja. I also did ask him, so do we have any identity of the group that carried out the attack? Has any arrest been made? And he says he's not aware. The police in the state will know. What I know is that once the guards succeeded in fighting back the terrorists, the road was cleared and all the users were held up, resumed their journeys. No idea about who did the attack. The president will go to Dara on Friday. So I did ask him that, yes, we needed to get these questions out for the public to know what is going on about all of this matter. So that's some response coming through from him. But we haven't heard from the Minister of Interior himself. We don't know his whereabouts. Tried to get Permanent Secretary, says he's got an appointment this morning, and so he can't make it and talk to Nigerians about what is going on. And so, but there's this gentleman, Dr. Sadiq Amali, who is of the Department of Sociology, Criminology and Security Studies, Federal University, Jigawa. He is specialist, he says he's in offender rehabilitation. He joins us virtually this morning from Dutse, as you can see there. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Now, you say that you tried to get across to the ministry, the minister, about this particular matter before it happened. So could you tell us what you told me behind the scenes about why you tried to reach out to them in order to prevent this kind of scenario?
Okay, good morning, fellow Nigerians. I've had a professional contact with the minister and the Controller General of Corrections on the rising cases or prevalence of jail attacks or the jailbreaks in the country. And I saw it coming, and this is not the first time it's happening. And unfortunately, this might not be the last. It may keep on happening. So my general view is that there could be, it's a national embarrassment, and it's a failure on the part of the intelligence of, I'm sorry to say, the Nigerian Correctional Service and other security agencies. And there should be a synergy between the Nigerian Correctional Service and other security agencies to prevent the possibilities of either attempted jailbreak or maybe attempted jailbreak or maybe even a successful jailbreak.
Why did you reach out? How did you see it coming?
Yeah, I saw it coming because of the cases. There were rising number of cases. In 2021, we had it in Oyo, we had it in Benin. So you can see that it kept on happening. And when they were decongesting the correctional centers due to COVID, I had a professional contact with the minister, and I advised him on certain measures on the dangers of decongesting the prisons. Although there were criteria that ought to be met before decongesting the prison, maybe based on age, based on ailments. But these people with ailments or people that had few years to complete their jail term, what if they go back to the wider society and try to collaborate with other dangerous elements and then trying to release their fellow colleagues that were in custody? So I saw it coming. The minister reacted to my correspondence, and I think that maybe the security measures put in place were not adequate, or maybe there was a bit of lapses on the part of the correctional system or correctional service.
Now, that letter which you speak about, titled Nigerian Correctional Service and the Pandemic COVID-19, the swift decongestion of custodial centers and its possible implications to national security. Did you get any response? I mean, why is this decongestion, what role could it have played in this particular attack?
Yeah, what I just said, the possibility is that some dangerous elements who were granted unexpected release may have gone back to the society to collaborate with other dangerous elements or other criminals to facilitate the jailbreak. Although certain criteria ought to have been met, which was well explained in the reason for decongesting the correctional centers, but it could still be a problem in terms of compromising existing national security.
Well, you told me that some of those who have been released could have played the role in helping coordinate and give information to those would-be attackers. Did you get any report whatsoever that could have been a possibility?
Yeah, it could be a possibility based on my knowledge of criminology and based on the presence of dangerous elements and maybe knowing the security, the prison architecture, but that is by other inmates and then relating it to other criminals. Because if you look at it, there has been a decline in the security apparatus in the Nigerian correctional system. There's a need for a culpable guardian, which the culpable guardians are there, but how effective are they? When I say culpable guardian now, it means the security measures like the armed officials, that is the barricades or the checkpoints before you reach the correctional centers. So if these things are not put in place and the inmates, sometimes there could be a bit of a compromise between by correctional officials, inmates, and likewise the dangerous elements outside there, who could say that the security measures in the correctional centers is not effective. They can tell them, okay, we have only 10 men guarding us. So by the time 200 people or 200 terrorists come to the correctional centers, it's easy to say that they will be overpowered.
Dr. Amale, the issue of that protection that you talked about is something that I had been looking forward to ask the general. We'll get to him shortly. But when you talk about the overpopulation and the congestion process of the prisons, the correctional facilities that we have, there are those who have raised questions about the fact that something in the region of 60 to 70% of people, 74,000 plus of them in the various correctional facilities, are awaiting trial. I don't know if there was anything or conversation that you had with the minister involved the decongestion process using the judicial system, seeing that they are largely awaiting trial, and if their trial had been done and dusted, at least maybe some of them would have been released justifiably through the courts.
Yeah, if you look at it, I've conducted several studies in correctional centers in Nigeria, and I can confirm that to you that 90% of correctional centers in Nigeria are congested with awaiting trial inmates due to problem of missing files, death of maybe a suspect, or death of a witness, or all those kind of things. So I can confirm to you that there's the high congestion rate of awaiting trial inmates. And that was why when they were decongesting the correctional centers, like I said earlier, there were some criteria that ought to have been met. which according to the Ministry of Interior, some inmates were aged, some inmates had terminal ailments, but sometimes these inmates are even innocent, because I've seen an inmate who told me that he was accused of stealing tomato and he was on awaiting trial in a custodial center, which I don't want to mention, for about 6 years. So largely, the Nigerian correctional system is synonymous to congestion. But this is not only common with Nigeria, even across the globe, Britain and other countries, they have this problem of congestion. But I think from what I've seen in most correctional centers in Nigeria, it's really alarming.
Well, let me ask General Sekagbe this next question in our Abuja studio. General, give us a sense, if you can, what the process should look like, what the environment of a prison or a custody setup, if I can use the term, should look like that's made this so vulnerable, and not just once. Quite a number, given the report that we played the other time, in various states all over the nation, and looking at various gradations of prisons in the country. What should a prison environment look like? And given the response Dr. Amali just gave, we've gradually degraded the security parameters around the prisons. What have we missed over the years that's made us this vulnerable?
Well, first of all, there is conflict of names. If you want to detain, there are difference between detention centers and correctional center. Correctional center, as the name implies, are people who have been tried and they are kept there to serve their terms, so that in the process you correct their psyche and return them to the society, so that they integrate to the society and become productive fellows. But when you talk of detention centers are where these elements, 64 people we are talking about, are kept, pending, the action that is going to be taken judicially and otherwise. So if they were kept in the detention center as the name implies, that there will be more security consciousness, there will be a detailed and a robust, security arrangement that will guide and protect the places that they are kept. So you do not keep hiding elements in the correctional center. So if you want to keep them with the appropriate place, it's supposed to be a detention center.
At some point, some people who ought to do one thing or the other didn't either know what to do or just looked the other way around.
Well, this comes back to the same point we were talking about. You have to appoint people that have what it takes to, do their job. And one of the major problems we have in this country is, correct, recruitment of people into offices. If you want to appoint somebody to an office, you must have to look at his, his profile, look at his pedigree, and find out whether this person is fit to occupy such an office. So above that, if somebody derelicts in his or her duty, action must be taken so that next time, people know that they can be held accountable to their actions. So we leave a lot of loopholes to be exploited by all these things. And as a matter of fact, we rage and, fury over a lot of issues without a consequent, response or, accountability. So the earlier we start to put things right, and that's why I mentioned to Mark earlier, the need to declare a national emergency in this area, security sector. The National Assembly should revise our obsolete laws. Then there should be, a very clear process of appointment of people into the offices they occupy. And when they derelict, there is no choice than to, remove them immediately. Because unfortunately in this country we have people that have that conscience of saying, let me resign when I fail in my duties. So when they don't want to do that, then you have to force them out.
Well, General, just one last question around the questions that the president asked. Quite a number of them, and I'm just wondering, they don't look or sound like rhetorical questions. For instance, the president asked this series of questions. Chamberlain asked a few of them the other time. How did the defenses at the prison fail to prevent the attack? How many inmates were in the facility? How many of them can you account for? How many personnel did you have on duty? How many of them were armed? Were there guards on the watchtower? What did they do? Does the CCTV work? What's your take on these questions coming from the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces?
Well, I'm expecting that when he comes back, he's going to set up, some kind of, investigative panel to look at the circumstances that surrounded that mishap. And we also expect that, they will bring out the findings and appropriate actions will be taken. Because as I'm talking to you now, you released some figures by Chamberlain. They told about 64, of these elements, and they told you 443 have been recaptured. Are these 64 people members of those 443? Again, there is silence. You see, we don't do tidy job, and you say number of inmates recaptured 443, and you are silent on the 64, which is a cause for concern for Nigerians.
Yeah.
So these 443 people
in that case, General. In that case, then,
is anyone among them?
When you say you expect the president to come back and set up certain things, wait, after going there, being miffed about what transpired, should it be setting up a committee or firing people? You said if they fail to resign, they should be forced out. Doesn't the buck stop at this table? Shouldn't he be doing the firing by now?
No, a president does not just take, actions on the spot, as spur of the moment. So they will come back with an appropriate report to find out. He has expressed his concerns, and these are his expectations. How will people come into this area? What is the security arrangement? And all that. He has asked questions. He needs answers to those questions. And when he gets the answer to those questions, I think that will determine, the action that will follow.
Mr. Sadiq Amali, I'd like to come to you now and pick up General Cecil's point earlier about, the nomenclature of the prison service is supposed to be correctional, and our earlier report on the program referred to the vulnerability of the centers, how the inmates carry phones, how the physical security, of the prison service leaves much to be desired. Now, if correctional is supposed to be reformatory, what are your recommendations in terms of how we should be taking a second look about, the welfare, or perhaps a reconsideration of that nomenclature in the first place, correctional?
If you look at it, when an inmate is supposed to be taken into custody, there has to be a bit of a profile of what he has committed, what offense he has committed, what is his term of incarceration, and then that helps in the proper classification of the inmates. That is, we call it separation techniques. That is, first-time offenders should not be kept with recidivists. When I say recidivists now, they are perpetual criminals. So that is the beginning of the failure of the Nigerian correctional system in terms of when there's no adequate classification, because these inmates, categories of inmates, needs to be separated. So instead of an inmate to get corrected, rather he gets hardened due to living with other categories of inmates. He becomes more of a criminal, and then the issue of rehabilitation, reformation, and then maybe probably reintegration upon regaining freedom, it's no longer there. It can't be successful. How effective are the rehabilitation programs or vocational programs in the country or in the correctional center? This is a call to the Nigerian correctional system that they should improve upon this. If not, we keep on graduating criminals, hardened criminals back into the society, and then later become a threat to the existing national security. So these rehabilitation programs must be put in place, must be improved upon, so that an inmate, upon regaining freedom, is now a different, a changed person. I discussed with the previous Controller General during a ministerial retreat, sometimes in 2020, and I told him this issue of cramping people or cramping alleged offenders in the correctional centers, what should be done? He told me that there's a power of rejection now, which it's not every offender they can take into custody. But I don't think that has been effective in terms of looking at the high rate of awaiting trial inmates and the congestion in custodial centers.
About ineffectiveness and, perhaps if the NSA, as suggested or hinted earlier, should be held responsible for failure of intelligence, what about the welfare itself and particularly the security around the correctional centers? We'll be asking a lot of questions in that regard, but that will be after the break. Stay with Sunrise Daily. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Honorable Minister for Defense there speaking, and he was former minister some time back. And the report that we referred to earlier spoke about how there have been 8 attacks on correctional centers between 2020 and now. Speaking of which, I'm now coming to you, Honorable Bagos in Abuja. Speak to this, particularly with regards to earlier reports from the beginning of the year when the Minister of Interior said that operatives at the correctional centers should shoot to kill. So who is responsible for ensuring that security operatives at the correctional centers are adequately armed, and prepared for such attacks? Tie that to the many questions that President Muhammadu Buhari asked during his visit to the correctional center. So in terms of management and ensuring proper security of the correctional centers, who should be answering questions this morning?
Yeah, from the statement of the former minister shows that they know the problem for a long while. They know what can happen and where we are now. So purely is negligence, and in that negligence, the controller is supposed to have taken responsibility of what has happened, from the controller to the Minister of Interior. If the former Minister of Interior could say that he has visited twice and this is his report, which I have noted, the House will definitely probe what has been happening in time past in these prisons, and we want to see those reports. The current minister, has he visited, and what were his observations in some of these prisons, jailbreak across the country? And because if the minister is nowhere to be found, he should be put among the numbers of people that we are looking for, because he needs to come out and tell us what has happened, what is happening, what were his observations, and if these prisons are not well mounted. General have said it when he visited it, and the minister, the former minister, is still confirming to the attitude of this security personnel around the prisons. So definitely the controller should be held responsible. To me, they should even resign on moral grounds. If recruitment of leadership, people can no longer resign on moral ground, we should have a clause that if you fail, you should resign even on moral ground. But these are issues that when we look at how the prisons and the correctional centers are being secured. Let me give an example with the one in Jos. With the prison break, the correctional services jail break that happened in Jos, if you see the security formation around it, you will never believe that these people can walk in and be able to release even their Boko Haram brothers, and up till date, they have not yet been arrested. Where you have the DSS office, you have the police commissioner office, you have the area command, and you have the immigration office, you have barricades that you have to drive through before getting into the gate and these people could go in and come out. And so it shows that there is compromise somewhere. And that compromise somewhere are people that should be able to brought to book. They just jailbreak. Up till now, nobody has been relieved of his duty. We don't know what the report is saying about that jailbreak, but the Boko Haram terrorists from that jailbreak have been are still at large. Now we have the Kuje jailbreak. Same, the Boko Haram the terrorists have now gone out. So these are issues that we should really ask questions. What is the Minister of Interior doing about this jailbreak? The last time that he was asked at the villa, he said nothing like this again will happen. It has now happened. You have towers that are not working. Who is really mounting the security apparatus of these correctional centers? So heads need to roll. Now the National Assembly is really waiting.
Okay, speaking about the National Assembly, and as you know, when some of these things happen, there's several people who will give you some information behind the scenes that will not want to come forward and speak, so as they can protect certain things. But there's this theory out there that there was accurate and precise intelligence about this particular attack, but it was neglected. Is this something that you have heard, or will the National Assembly be interested in that theory as well?
Yeah, let me tell you something, Chamberlain. The DSS have always, at one point or the other, been able to generate intelligence on most of these attacks. But the communication and the network among security agencies is what is causing us most of these problems. That the DSS will be able to generate some of this information, but at the end of the day, you don't have people that will be able to mount or counter most of this intelligence that has come out. We just came back from Plateau State, where we went to investigate the wanton killings in Wase and other neighboring states. These people testify on how these terrorists move in hundreds of bikes, 300, 200. And intelligence have been able to map out that this is where these people are, but they have not been able to be fetched out. And even people that were released from those from captives usually say that even the terrorists say that, well, the only thing they can fear of is whenever they see a fighter jet or the Air Force hovering around. But if it is the ground troop, they have enough men to be able to counter whosoever will come to attack them. So it tells you that we are in a very serious danger as it is at the moment. And this 64 that have been released will go back to add to the force they already have. And even to ask more questions, how and who told the security agencies that the people that went to remove the 64 are those that attack the train in Kaduna? So which means they know them. If you now can identify that those that carried out the attack in Kuje are the people that carried the attack on the train on Kaduna, so which means you know these people. Why have you not arrested these people before now? You know that they were going to do this. They are the people that, where are they? So now we'll now wait for another jailbreak. They will now tell us that the people that carried out the jailbreak in Kuje are the ones that carried out. You know these people. Why can't you bring them out? We have given you all the necessary support. We have given you the resources. We have given you the legislation from the National Assembly. You have the laws. You have the resources. What is happening? So leadership recruitment is a very big problem in this country. Emergency leadership recruitment. Who are the people that are mounting these agencies? Need to go out. Fresh hands need to come in. And these are issues that we'll definitely deliberate on the floor of the House when we come back from our recess next week.
How is the House going to proceed with this? For instance, after this occurred, the first 48 hours is very crucial. Who is supposed to have cordoned off the place? Will the House require or request or call for images of video of how that place looked like after the attack? Because there are some accusations and theories that there might have been collaboration by state actors concerning how this event happened. And so will the House request all of those? Because after a while, certain things may be moved around to cover up certain grounds or certain persons.
Yeah, absolutely. The House will probe and ask for all this necessary information. And that is even if they have CCTV that is working. The president is asking if CCTV, where are the CCTV footage and so on and so forth. The president, as far as I'm concerned, does not really know what is happening. He still feels that the security apparatus that he has been approving funds within is still like the security that he has in the villa. But they are not telling him the truth. I'm sure if the president had told them that next tomorrow I will be going to Kuje prison, they might advise him not to go. But he surprised them by going there. So even the president, they are not telling the president the true nature of what is happening in terms of security architecture of the country. Does Kuje prison have even the CCTV that they can tell us today that is working? Because if it is working in the international community, in a developed world by now, you could have seen the footage of how these people were coming in numbers and how they carried out their attack. Because CCTV is being saved in the cloud. You have it in the cloud. As I'm seated here, I can view my house. How much does it take to put CCTV? 70,000 naira, you can put a camera. So these are things that we should start asking, where is the technology that we're supposed to use to prevent security, this mark of insecurity in the country? So a lot of questions the National Assembly will ask.
All right, let me turn to Major General Cecil. When some of the narratives out there just tend to feed into some other conspiracy theories. For instance, it is also said that some military personnel were moved from that area before this attack happened. Now, if that were the case, who should be answering questions about that?
Well, Chamberlain, thank you. I'm not very good at, discussing conspiracy theories. The issue there is there is a contingent security arrangement for a correctional center or any detention center. The question of some military men were moved before they went in there is very absurd. If in the security plan, there are supposed to be military men in a particular area, it will be obvious. So there's no any conspiracy about it. We need to find out whether the military were deployed in that area.
Indeed, we have some information on that the military was deployed there. I'm looking at this statement which was released by Umar Abubakar, now who's the Chief Superintendent of Corrections. He says that, recall that after the attack at the Medium Custodial Center in Agbolongo in Oyo State, the Honorable Minister of Interior met with the heads of the security agencies under his supervision, where the idea of Joint Security Task Force comprising the Nigerian Correctional Service, Nigerian Immigration Service, and the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps was formed to forestall further breaches on custodial facilities. As at the time of the attack at the Kuje facility, we have 38 military personnel on ground, in addition to personnel of the Nigeria Police Force, Civil Defense, DSS, and our armed squad. So these were the people that were overpowered. Raises big questions as well. If they had 38 military personnel, people of the Nigeria Civil Defense Corps, police officers, DSS officers, and even the Nigeria Correctional Facility armed squad, then, how were these terrorists able to get through?
Well, that is different from the conspiracy theory that they were withdrawn before the incident happened. So if they were there and overpowered, they couldn't have been withdrawn. So that is a different ballgame. If they were there and they were overpowered, then that is they fell in their duties. So for the conspiracy theory that they were withdrawn before the attack, I mean, it's absurd. I don't think that will happen in any...
Well, they are also saying here that the public is also informed that some of the attackers were killed. According to them, even though we have not seen any bodies, the only body we saw was that of the Civil Defense official, which was reported. He said that some of the attackers were killed, while some escaped with gunshot wounds. We therefore appeal to hospitals and other medical institutions and practitioners to report anyone that comes to them for treatment for gunshot injuries to the nearest law enforcement agency.
Another conspiracy theory. With the massive attack that happened in that correctional center, and the mental, our attitude as most of these people working in that area as ascribed to by the Minister of Defense, do you think there will be that magnitude of attack and they will not run helter-skelter like other inmates and all that?
Yeah, but
where would they get that?
The weapons and the coordination?
Yes, to counter explosives and GPMGs and ROPGs at this point.
So you suspect that they might have abandoned posts?
They would have been overpowered. They were overpowered, looking at the magnitude of attack. So this is neither here nor there. When Umaru continued to say, until we see the people that they killed and the people that they injured.
Yeah, I think General want to be like kind of softened with the words because of. I don't think they were overpowered. They abandoned their post because you can't say 38 people with well armed in that place, and at least they cannot bring down 10 to 20 of those attackers. That
if they are prepared.
Yeah, if they are prepared. Because categorically, if most of them were on sleepers and they have phones and they just had this bomb and everywhere, they would run and leave their duty posts. Some of them, when was it last they serviced even their guns to be able to fire back? So definitely, because number one, how many people were killed by the security on ground? The former minister have said that he went and saw the tower, that since the tower was erected, no personnel have climbed the tower. Meaning, yeah, so if those towers were being mounted, it could have been very difficult unless they use bomb to bring down the tower. The personnel on the tower will bring down a lot of people, most of them. So the towers were not even being mounted. So how can they even repel those people that came in? And again, they are now saying that if you see anyone with gunshot wound, and you should be able to do, how can you even how can you identify? Do you know their faces? Are there pictures circulating now on the social media that these are the 64 people that have escaped?
Now the issue there is like Chamberlain was saying. If it is established that there were military personnel, 38 of them there,
yes,
we need to find out that if that statement is correct, and we also need to find out how they deployed. We are just talking about a platoon of soldiers, how they were deployed in that correctional center, and the role given to them to play. Again, this buttress to the point that the Nigerian soldiers are unnecessarily overstressed. Because how do you deploy even soldiers in a correctional center? How do you correct, the mental attitude of a human being with soldiers present in that area? Well, so the soldiers are overstressed. They should be allowed to do their job. The correctional center should be able to man a correctional center. And the former minister made it very clear that they made provisions for them to correctly secure the provisional center. So if there is actionable intelligence that these people are coming, you need military personnel, they should not be 38.
General, don't forget that this was done after another attack had happened. According to the statement, it was after the Oyo attack that they put this particular team together. And this was their own effort in rejigging. So it might mean that different security agencies were given different tasks. I mean, one would imagine that if defense of the prison, of the correctional service was what they had in mind, that soldiers will be in a good place to be able to, because they will understand defense.
But like I've always said here, the major problem we have is interagency cooperation.
So that would have been missing?
Yes, we have interagency cooperation, and the lack of it is our major problem in all our security calculations. So when it is not there, you don't bring orange and mangoes together.
Well, big questions on every front. But, I mean, for a number of people now, I think that for a number of Nigerians, where their apprehension lies is in the capacity of the state to be able to apprehend those who have escaped. Exactly. How would you assess your confidence levels in the ability of the state to be able to bring back those who have escaped?
0.0001. If I have to ascertain that those that have
You
escaped,
have no confidence
no
whatsoever?
confidence at all, because...
General, what about you?
Well, the question is the fundamentals are missing. Like he said earlier, do you profile these people? If you profiled, what, do you have their passport photographs? Do you even have where they come from? Do you have their ages so that you know where to track them? Maybe in the pubs or drinking areas and all that. So when you do not do profiling, it is difficult to... now, what they want to do now is to start harassing innocent Nigerians in a series of checkpoints and all that are aimed at nothing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we'll wait and see, because, I mean, we're still expecting the response of the Nigeria Correctional Service. Apart from a statement which they released, they have questions to answer about what they have been able to find out. The public needs to know. We're also expecting the Minister of Interior, Mr. Rauf Aregbesola, to also be speaking at this point about what, you know, has been put in place before now, and because people need to be reassured. But, I mean, the ball is in their courts now.
Not just be speaking, Maope.
Yes.
People should be resigning on moral grounds at this very particular moment. Even if the president have not sacked any, on moral grounds. If in the UK, 14 ministers in the same cabinet do no longer believe in the prime minister, just resign on moral grounds, talk less of here that they could no longer understand what is... What are you doing on that position? Even for your name, you should be able to resign.
So, but let me just advise Nigerians, especially those of us in Abuja now that this has happened, while we wait for the big recapture, we should be vigilant and, you know, when we see something, we should say something and try and mind where we'll go to at this time so that we minimize the...
And I think
we're totally out of time.
Yes. Channels and other media stations, most of these correctional centers or some of these security issues now, you look at image journalism now. Bring out the Kuje prison. Let's see the parameters around the Kuwait prison and other prisons around the country, because most of these prisons, like the ones we just saw now, they have zinc, and which is just meant for like a police station. In international practice, you're supposed to have bunkers. Even a defense, a bomb shouldn't have been able to bring down that prison.
So many questions. Well, gentlemen, we have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Elite this morning. Major General Esika Igbe is a retired Army officer speaking to us here in our Abuja studio, and Honorable Dachong Bagos is a member National Security and Intelligence Committee, Deputy Chairman Anti-Corruption Committee in the House of Representatives. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Over now to you, the team in Lagos.
Yes, indeed, Mark, but you know, it can't be said enough about the confidence in the security agents or in the Interior Ministry to get back those who have escaped from jailbreaks in the past. In the briefing by the minister earlier in the year, he said 4,860 inmates escaped between 2020 and now. 984 have been recaptured. So if you add the current number to that figure, it leaves us with more than 4,000 who are at large, unless there is any correction to this figure. But as you wrap up for us, Mr. Dr. Amali, just comment briefly on, you know, the fact that from that jailbreak, Madala and Nyanya bombers, dangerous, you know, terrorists are at large. As you wrap up very quickly.
Okay, it could be a threat to existing national security, and it's unfortunate that we have these dangerous elements moving around, and we don't know. We shouldn't undermine the attacks they may coordinate in the future. But first, I want to correct the opinion of the member and then the Major General that I visited some correctional centers, and they have good biometric device or services. Like, I can give you an example. Do you see custodial center in Chigawa State? They have a very effective.
We have to run, pardon me, well, thank you very much indeed. So that said, having visited the place and that they have all that, so what is the Nigerian police waiting for? Since the government has said there are 64 that are being sought after, declare them wanted. Release those pictures and those images, let us see. All right, so I'm not sure we'll have time for some messages. Do we, gentlemen? Thank you, Dr. Amali, for your time this morning. Do we have some time for messages? Okay, we've got Emmanuel Isong talking about this Kuje prison break. He says, I heard the president asking pertinent questions concerning the prison break. Questions about the response time, functionality of the CCTV camera. We are quite familiar with these questions. I imagine the president knows that those he appointed to man these positions will heads roll for once in this country. I've asked Mr. Gabashew, I haven't heard his response on that actually, so watch the space.
Okay. Still on that state of security in Nigeria, Eka Dixon says in the UK, over 17 ministers and 48 other appointees of government resigned their positions in 48 hours because they're not satisfied with the administration of the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. In Nigeria, things have moved from bad to worse with government not doing enough, and there is no end in sight, and nobody is resigning. After the attacks on the advance team of President Buhari and that of the Kuje Correctional Center, the heads of intelligence agencies ought to voluntarily resign.
That's if they do. And very quickly, Henry Okeke says, call it negligence of duty or dereliction of duty. It continues unabated. Too bad. Now, if we don't have a comprehensive profile of the prisoners made public, how can we be sure that those being rearrested are the actual escapees? Big question there. We'll take a cue from Brigadier Sessi, who says, be wary of where you go at this time, and add to that, don't stay late. Out.
Just release the pictures. Release their data. You have our data. Release this data, for goodness sake, so that everybody can see that. Well, that is a show. And don't forget, if those who carried out this attack were the same ones that carried out the attack for the train, remember, those same ones were always saying they wanted some of their people to be released. Could there be any connection to all of this? Food for thought. That's the show today.
Well, thank you so much for watching. We hate to leave you depressed, but hey, we're just saying be careful out there. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokpe Ogun Yusuf.
At a time when everyone is putting out memos, the UK, the US, and Nigeria, you, the Nigerian, has the memo to you. Stay safe out there. Amaya Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
Indeed, that can't be said enough. Thank you for sending in your comments and let the conversation continue online. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.
I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.